Hello and welcome to the Checking In podcast. I'm Gabrielle from the Barossa Library.
And I'm Tess, also from the Barossa Library. We have created this podcast to connect with our community.
Libraries are for everyone, and we invite you to join us each episode as we deliver the library in a different way.
In this podcast, we'll be speaking to a variety of interesting people from all walks of life.
Plus, keep you updated with all the library happenings and so much more.
The Barossa Council acknowledges the Ngadjuri, Peramangk and Kaurna people and their ancestral connection to land, and pays respect to elders past, present and emerging.
February is Library Lovers Month, and Checking In explores why do people love libraries. It's a time to remember that our libraries are a place where we can get lost in an idea, explore an issue we are curious about, or discover something new that inspires the imagination.
It's an opportunity to celebrate the essential roles libraries have in our communities, how they promote digital inclusion, foster a love of reading in the younger generation, and how they help develop and improve information literacy, and so much more. In Chapter 2, we've invited staff from the Barossa Council to share their stories and their love of libraries.
Welcome today, Sharon Wessels. First of all, Sharon, can you just tell me your role in the council?
Yeah, I started in the library, funny enough, as a librarian. Super proud of that space. And now I'm in the gallery. So I'm at the Barossa Regional Gallery in Tanunda, where I take care of the retail and administration side of things.
Now that is quite a jump from libraries to the gallery. Did you study libraries?
I did study libraries. So I had an opportunity when my kids were really young to do some uni study in information management. But I have a background in art and architecture. So as you do over your life, you kind of get a mix of different sort of branches. And so I'm a bit of an amalgamation of a few things.
And what do you love about libraries?
I love libraries. I still have a very nostalgic view of the library space, even though it's changed quite a lot since I was first in a library. I remember growing up and being probably, a single digit age, and my home life was super busy. Like, we have huge families, so lots of people in and out. And I remember going to the library and just being in this safe, quiet space where nobody could be in your kind of proximity close by. And I just loved that there was a sort of a freedom in the library. Then it was that sort of culture of you had to be quiet in the library. And I really loved that too, because we had a noisy house with so many people, which I really liked. But it was just nice to go to the library and have a reliable space to go and hang out and discover, the world really. So the library is a gateway for me for discovering the world.
So do your own children share this love of libraries and books?
They sure do. They love sitting in the car and reading. They rarely look outside the car window. They read all the way into the city or wherever, long trips we're going on. Maybe a little bit less now because I'm not in the library. When I was in the library, it was a great opportunity to see what new books were around and I could feed them new books. So it's a little trickier to kind of get on top of some good material for them. But yeah, they love reading.
Speaking of new books, do you have a favourite from 2023?
I do. I've come prepared for that one.
Well done.
So my favourite book, and it's hard, I love books, so I'll get lots of different varied books throughout the year. I won't read them all from the beginning to finish, but this book in particular was Nina Simone's Gum by Warren Ellis. And this was a tale about Nina Simone's gum being left on a piano when she was doing a performance, and Warren Ellis seizing that moment and grabbing that gum and holding on to it. So she, had a good chew, and it was a particular significant moment for him to have seen her perform. And what that spin-off was that it told the story about Warren and how he grew up in Ballarat and how he would go around his community and find things and And it might be incidental organic material or things that people had left on the hard rubbish or whatever. And it just became this sort of thread through the story about his creativity and his process in being creative. And I loved that it was about something so obscure as a piece of gum. But it grew with him over his life, and he took it to Paris where he lived, and it was wrapped up in she had a towel that she used at the gig, to keep herself fresh, and that it was wrapped up in that, and, that he hadn't seen it for years and he didn't want to look at it. And it just became this thing. And then they ended up casting it into a mould and then reproducing it. So it's just had this amazing life that has come. So that was definitely one of those books that kept me enthralled for the weekend, and I didn't do anything else but get through it. And one of those books where you turn the page and you're like, oh no, this is getting me to the end, but I've got to read more. So yeah, Nina Simone's Gum is definitely the fave for 2023.
Well, that certainly sounds different. Do you have an all-time favourite book?
No, I think I'm not super loyal to my books because there's always a new book on the horizon. So I'm always looking for the next book. I don't have an all-time great book.
Well, that's quite all right. Thank you so much, Sharon, for being on the Checking In podcast today.
Thanks for asking me, Gabrielle. Love your work.
Let's not forget love stories this month. It is Library Lovers Month after all.
Tess, do you have a favourite love story?
Oh, I'm really bad with favourites. I can't choose. And that's across many things in life. I just don't do favourites. One of my favourite love stories, though, would have to be the classic Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, I think that would be on top of a lot of people's favourites. It is one of mine as well. Mr. Darcy.
Mr. Darcy. There is only one Mr. Darcy.
And only one Elizabeth Bennet.
Absolutely. So, yes, that one is definitely right up the top with a couple others that I can think of.
I feel that we could talk about Pride and Prejudice. We could have a whole podcast.
We could.
Just dedicated to Pride and Prejudice.
Absolutely, yes.
But another time, we won't bore our listeners with us just rambling about Pride and Prejudice. When talking about love stories, you know what else comes to mind?
What's that?
Mills and Boon.
Ah, Mills and Boon.
Now, don't diss the Mills and Boon.
Not at all.
They are still really popular today. A lot of our customers are still really enjoying the Mills and Boon books, as I'm sure they are all over the world.
Absolute classics. There's a number of council staff who use the library on a regular basis, and fortunately for us, they were more than happy to be part of Checking In.
We have Rick Stephen here. Tell us about your role at the Barossa Council.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My role at Barossa Council is Assessment Officer Building, which is Building Surveyor. Many of the older listeners will probably remember the title as Council's Building Inspector. And my job is to check plans when they come in for your house plans and sheds and swimming pools, carports, etc. And I also do inspections on timber framing and footing inspections as your home's being built and when your pool's been finished.
I'm sure that role keeps you very busy.
It does, but I also enjoy having time off and finding a good book.
Oh, fantastic to hear. So, Rick, tell me, why do you love libraries?
I think it's something I inherited from as a child. I had teachers that got me started reading daily newspapers, and it's carried on. I especially love books and autobiographies and biographies on people, and best place to do it. I'm old school. I don't like reading books on a laptop or audio books. I like on the old-fashioned way, book in the hand.
Fantastic. And do you have any favourite books for 2023?
There was one I enjoyed particularly. It was called Faith Family Football. It was by former AFL footballer Basher Hooley. He used to play for Richmond. And a lot of people remember him from the big black flowing beard. But he was actually the AFL's first observant Muslim footballer. And he wrote about in his book about his time as an AFL footballer and his faith and how it interacts with his family and his football career.
Now tell me, Rick, you and I have had a conversation before and you had a wonderful story about you actually running the Robe Library there for a while. Can you tell the listeners a little bit more about that?
Yeah, look, approximately 20 years ago, I was Deputy CEO of the Road Council, and one of the tasks, we had a library/combined visitor information centre, and 4 weeks every year, the librarian always entrusted me to run the library for her. And she sort of made the cheeky comment, oh, look, I'm good with people, and I put the books back on the shelf.
Oh, fantastic.
But I think we did more than that. People come in, we found books for them through the interlibrary exchange programs, and people would come in looking for tourist information, and living there, I knew the best spots to send them. And that was good. It was fun. People would come in for a chat and take over the book or use the internet, the public internet.
Oh, I can tell you really enjoyed those 4 weeks a year.
I certainly did. Look at my time again. I wish I could do it again, but I've ended up being a building surveyor.
Well, you never know. We might have a bit of an opening when I go on holidays.
I'll definitely have a word to the Martin, the CEO, then.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us today, Rick. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you and to learn your history with libraries. Thanks again.
Thank you for having me.
Interesting how Rick mentioned reading Faith Family Football. I don't mind reading the occasional sports biography either. Towards the end of last year, I read Against the Water by surfing champion Owen Wright. It was his story of how he overcame a brain injury and then went on to win a bronze medal at the Tokyo Olympics. And it was a real uplifting story. I really enjoyed it. How about you, Tessa? Do you read many sports biographies?
I haven't read many. However, one that stayed with me, it's going back a few years now, is Open by Andre Agassi. I found that a really remarkable and insightful read about his journey growing up and his relationship with tennis.
Speaking of tennis, Ash Barty's biography, My Dream Time, was also a really good read.
Absolutely. She's inspirational. Another staff member we were fortunate enough to catch up with was Heidi Helbig.
Welcome to the Checking In podcast, Heidi.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, just tell me about your role here at Council.
I'm the team leader of communications and engagement. So we have a little team that's responsible for leading all sorts of media and comms for Council, making sure that our community is aware of what Council does out in community and how we uplift our community. It's a really lovely role and a great space to occupy because we're telling the great stories of Council.
You're also a big library user.
Yes, I am.
Why do you love the library so much?
I just love everything that libraries offer, just amazing diversity. I just love walking into the library and seeing just this rich array of people using the services, using the programs, liaising with the staff. Libraries have come such a long way from when I was a kid, with lots of books on shelves, and just to see, that absolute diversity and richness of libraries and how far they've come.
Do you have any early childhood memories of going to the local library?
I do. I loved my local library. I grew up in Wakery in the 80s and we were frequent visitors, myself and my siblings, to our local library. It was very 80s. The decor was very 80s and I have such fond memories of that space. The orange and brown carpet. We had a real archetypal librarian and he would have, the horn-rimmed glasses and the corduroy jacket with the elbow pads. And he loved what he did, and because he loved what he did, we loved that space and being there. So, from a very early age, even standing up on the footstools to have our library books stamped was one of my early memories. And back then we would read so many books simultaneously. I can't do that anymore. My brain doesn't have that capacity. But as a kid, we would read 5 or 6 books at the same time and just absolutely loved escaping into other fictional worlds. It was the best.
Do your own children have the same love of reading?
Absolutely. Yep. No, both my girls love reading and I read to them from a really early age. I think at the moment we've got about 22 overdue library books. So that probably gives you some indication of how much we love to read. And discovering all the different library branches has been really fun as well. So we don't just go to Newry, we go around. So every space offers something different for the girls. So that's really great too.
So Heidi, do you have a favourite book from 2023?
Ooh, now that's a good one. I'm a little bit behind the eight ball, I would say. So
Okay.
I'm actually reading Pip Williams' Dictionary of Lost Words at the moment.
Okay.
So I am a little bit behind, but I'm absolutely loving that book at the moment, and was really fortunate to go to the Meet the Author event with Pip in November, and just so fabulous to hear how she researched her book and her thoughts on plotting and characters and character development. She was fabulous and fascinating, so I can't wait to read her next one as well.
Do you have a preference out of fiction or non-fiction?
Mostly just fiction, and usually it's a quick beach read, I've got to be honest. Sometimes when we're a bit time poor, a quick beach read is something a bit frivolous, is a bit of fun. I do love the classics as well, so I will quite often go back and revisit all of the Jane Austens, Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, Charles Dickens, some of the classics that I read in year 11 and 12, and I've got them at home, so they're a deep dive when I've got a bit more time.
You mentioned that you take your children to the library. Have you ever taken them to any school holiday events?
Absolutely, yeah. No, the girls love utilising the school holiday program, and I guess that's another thing that speaks to the diversity and richness of what libraries offer. So my daughter Isla did an amazing facilitated manga art course, and that just set the tone for those whole school holidays. It was just manga art every day and every night, which was wonderful. And, just going off-site, we've been to the Barossa Nursery to do potting workshops and things like that, and that's why I guess the library is just such a wonderful place for so many people.
Well, thank you, Heidi, for being on the Checking In podcast today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Some of our guests have mentioned their early memories of libraries. Gab, do you have any childhood memories of going to a library?
I remember when I was about 10, we would go to the local library to get books, funnily enough. But the different thing about this library is that they had a pet snake.
A pet snake?
A pet snake called Solomon.
Great name.
Great name for a snake. He lived in a glass enclosure as you would exit the library. So that was very different.
Absolutely. That is very unexpected and awesome, I must say.
I like to do the unexpected.
You do indeed.
And how about you, Tessa? Any childhood memories of going to the library?
Well, I have a fun fact.
A fun fact? I love a fun fact.
We all love a fun fact. I often visited the Wakery Library as a child, and I did notice that that's somewhere that Heidi also would visit.
She did mention that, yes.
Yeah, so the library in Wakery, which is a small town in the Riverland, was across the road from where my parents worked, and I have lovely memories from my childhood of visiting the library, curling up with a book for an hour or two, and just being lost in a different world before heading home for the evening.
Our regular programs this week include Rattle and Rhyme from birth to 18 months. Join us for song, action and play, and maybe a story or two for the babies. A great place to meet others in the community. Also, we have Playtime. That is for 18 months to 3 years old. Join us for songs, story, sensory and open-ended play activities for toddlers. A great place to have some fun.
We also have History Help On, which is a weekly learning session that we offer for patrons. Bookings are essential, and you meet up with a member of the local history team to look through perhaps a family history inquiry that you're having problems with, or a local history query that you'd like some more information about, and we try and help you out with those.
I have seen some customers come out of those sessions. I feel that has just given them a new path, a new direction to go in, and they're sometimes a little overwhelmed, but I can just tell they're just going to take that information and just explore it further by themselves. And I think that's the whole point of those sessions, isn't it? That you kind of get them started and then they can, it kind of gives them that next step of how they can continue.
Absolutely.
It's been really good hearing from all our guests and their experiences and memories of libraries.
We'd really like to thank Sharon, Rick and Heidi for joining us on the show. And we'd like to thank you for listening.
If you haven't been to your library in a while, what's stopping you? Libraries are a sanctuary away from the hustle and bustle of everyday life. They are a community meeting place.
And don't forget the books. Lots and lots of books.
Remember to like and subscribe. It really helps us out.
Bye.